I'm Judy.
David, nice to meet you. How are you?
It's supposed to start late. I'm Alex. Okay, there we go. Yeah, everything changed. Absolutely. That's good. You've done so many of these. In fact, I probably have a bunch about this day along the way.
You're actually
I'm in San Diego County.
San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego County. A little bit, yeah. It's just up the hill. Yeah, just up the hill a little bit.
You flew up, right?
No, we drove.
You drove.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so we got an
Wasn't sure you got the materials. We have an agenda, a big map of all the districts, and then each
Did you do all Buffalo?
No, yeah, so this came on his own, and it's like right up to San Diego, so.
That's a long drive. So you
for
took five.
commission wherever the pens and paper
I've
are.
gone down to, I guess, like, Orange
And then
County.
the other one will be the last three.
Okay.
You know, one.
Yeah, in one shot, yeah.
I got one stop at Harris Range.
Oh, nice.
Fun. You know, that's that big thing right in the middle?
Yeah.
And it's fun to stop there. They have a ton of charging stations and they have,
Yeah, they have the Harris Ranch supercharger there.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's great food.
It's all good stuff.
When you get on the five, you're on the way.
Yes, definitely. Oh, yeah, I mean, I mean, just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pull it in.
Yeah. Hopefully, you can see something there.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole set of people.
Yes.
Actually, I'm gonna write that.
It's got its own exit. It's made like the other
Sister cities.
It's a little warm today, so it might be a nice one today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, you have flights.
He was actually on the train in a part of the class.
Oh, that's nice. I'm David.
Yeah, 'cause he was getting was in the middle where.
I'm on the commission this year. Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Oh, thank you, exactly.
And then eventually you want to draw.
Oh, I remember. Oh, yes. You did not vote against anyone, trust me. We were amazed with everyone.
Julie knows.
So how's your holiday season? I'm sorry?
So when I saw that,
Oh, really?
Are you Pamela Jones?
Where did you get it? Right around here, you guys?
Pleasure to meet you. I'm Alex.
hi guys.
You know Solutions.
I know, there's so
Yeah. No, I mean, just having people like you to help get the word out. And, you know, Menlo Park actually from the projects that I'm working on, it's been very impressive. The local engagement and community involvement. It's great to see.
All right, that's fine.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
But no, pleasure to meet you in person.
I know. We appreciate your comments all the time. Please do.
Hi, I'm David.
I'll be right back. They want to call this order. You guys ready to get started?
Okay. Welcome, good afternoon. It's 12:04, we'll convene. This is a special meeting of the City of Menlo Park Independent Redistricting Commission. This is a public meeting with IRC members, city staff, and members of the public. Nice to see, participating in full compliance with state and local mandates regarding indoor mask wearing and social distancing during this federal, state, and local emergency. So, roll call, I'd like to introduce staff and the commissioners present. We have City Clerk Julie Aaron, Administrative Assistant Sarah Sandoval, Vice Chair Gilmer, to my right, Commissioners Earhart, Vallis, and Hill going down the table, and then also to my right, Commissioner Walter. And we have, well, that's it for our commissioners and alternates, but we do have a quorum, so we're ready to go. City Clerk Karen, please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how our meeting will proceed this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. So at this time, which is again echoing a warm welcome to our first in-person redistricting commission meeting. For members of the public, there'll be an open public comment period where you can just raise your hand to provide public comment. And then following the presentation we have by our demographers, the chair will then open up the floor again just for a more casual kind of discussion with the public to receive and solicit input. We are recording this meeting. You'll see the camera in the back. So we do ask that we project and speak clearly, especially given our masks. So again, that does conclude my introductions. And Chair, you may continue.
Thank you, Ms. Herron. So that brings us to agenda item C, public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the IRC on any subject not listed on the agenda. May address us for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. And please note that the RSC cannot act on any items not listed on the agenda, which means we cannot respond to non-agenda issues that you may bring up under public comment, other than to provide some general information. Ms. Sandoval, can you please call or see if we have any public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Arnetta. At this time, if any member of the public in attendance today wishes to speak on an item not on today's agenda, please raise your hand and we'll ask you to stand and address the commission. Seeing no hands, we can continue, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. So that brings us to why we're all here today, presentations. Item D, we have our consultants from GeoInnovo here to provide an overview of the public mapping tool. This is the main piece of technology that we'll be using to do our work as the Independent Redistricting Commission. I'd like to introduce our consultants from GeoInnovo, Alex Sands in the yellow and black mask. Like a boxing ring announcer. And Jesus Garcia in the all black mask. And we also have Lucian Musa.
Hello.
In the audience. So, Alex, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm gonna go ahead, can everybody hear me clearly? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and provide a brief overview of our team and the redistricting process. For the commissioners, this is gonna be the same presentation that we provided on Thursday, but just to provide for the members of the public at the community meeting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. So we'll kick off with brief intros of the GeoInnovo team. Lucian Musa, she's the founder and CEO of GeoInnovo. She has over 20 years of industry experience and is OSHA certified and has her geography degree from the University of Alabama. She is also an Esri product expert, including GeoEvents, real-time mapping, and analytics. Jesus Garcia is our lead demographer for this project. He has over 30 years of experience in data analytics and is serving as our demographer for all of our redistricting projects. He has a master's degree from UCLA in urban planning and is an expert in redistricting. He also served as a demographic statistician for the U.S. Census Bureau for 5 years in Washington, D.C. My name is Alex Saenz. I'm the project manager for GeoInnovo, and we'll be coordinating with the team, the IRC, and city staff throughout this process. I have 13 years of GIS professional experience supporting many local government public safety projects and redistricting. My areas of expertise include GIS administration, web map configuration, and leading GIS projects. And that will conclude about that. So goal of this meeting is to provide relevant information to the public regarding key aspects of redistricting. Items covered during the presentation include mapping and demographic requirements, an overview of the public meeting schedule, and a demo of our technology tool that we will be making available. Redistricting is the process of adjusting or rebalancing district boundaries every 10 years after the release of decennial census data. This process occurs for federal, state, and local government bodies who have districts for elected officials. At a high level, the goal of this process is to create population balanced districts for equal representation. The California Fair Maps Act was passed in 2019 to implement specific criteria for public agencies to follow during the redistricting process. As a best practice, UNOVA recommends following the criteria defined in the California Fair Maps Act. Criteria listed below are listed in order of priority. Number 1, districts shall be geographically contiguous. Number 2, to the extent practicable, districts shall maintain the geographic integrity of local neighborhoods and communities of interest. Number 3, to the extent practicable, minimize the division of cities and census designated places. Number 4, districts shall be easily identifiable by either natural or artificial barriers. And number 5, to the extent practicable, and where it does not conflict with the preceding criteria, districts shall be geographically compact. At a high level, our redistricting plan contains 5 phases or milestones, as you can see listed here, and I will go into a brief description of each of these project milestones in the next few slides. Task 1, project planning and demographic analysis. UNO will be providing training and demonstrations regarding the redistricting process, technology tools, and other relevant information for redistricting. The final step for this process is to prepare the community for this process is just going through all of our relevant presentations, technology demos, and beginning our demographic analysis. Task 2, is kind of why we're here today, community engagement. Allowing the public to participate and be engaged in the redistricting process. Some of the tools, including the District Earth digital mapping interface, will be used to help facilitate public engagement and submission of community input during the process. And our job as a demographer, part of our job anyway, will be collaborating with the IRC, city staff, on upcoming community meetings and gathering of public input. Task 3, district boundaries. UNO will evaluate existing council districts for population balance and demographic data, particularly by racial and ethnicity groups. Existing council districts will be evaluated for compliance with relevant laws, including federal and California Voting Rights Act and the California Fair Maps Act. Task 4, presentation of initial or draft maps, includes presentation of valid map candidates to the IRC. UNO will assist city staff with presentation of staff reports and any relevant presentation materials for public meetings. And this task also includes, would be more for the IRC, for us, presentation of census data trends going all the way back from 1990 and every census year up to 2020. Task 5, this is where all the hard work in the previous steps pays off, with the adoption of the final district map. Final maps will be presented prior to the final meeting to the IRC, and UNO will coordinate with the IRC and city staff to ensure that all GIS data, block equivalency files, and other supporting materials are provided for submission to the San Mateo County Registrar of Voters. The public meeting schedule is listed here on this slide. We have our community meeting today, December 11th. We will also be offering a community meeting next weekend, December 18th, at City Council Chambers. Other meetings on the meeting schedule, you can see public meetings on January 13th, February 10th, March 10th, March 25th, and that March 25th date is important because that is the map submission deadline for IRC consideration. So for all members of the public, that will be that's a key date to keep in mind during the process. April 7th will be the fourth public hearing, and then April 14th, that'll be more or less task 5, the final public hearing, and the IRC adoption of the final maps. And after that, April 17th, which falls on a Sunday, we'll work that out, work with IRC, city staff, to get all of the final data submitted to the San Mateo County Registrar of Village. Okay, the GeoNovo offers a full suite of technology tools to help the city of Menlo Park engage with the community. Districtor is the primary mapping tool that will be used for draft districts and communities of interest. We will have a demo following very shortly. And GeoNovo will also be deploying a GeoCIM, community input map, available in English and Spanish. And demographic dashboard, this tool incorporates proposed districts, so because of that, we will be deploying that after the second public meeting in compliance with best practices of the California Fair Maps Act. Okay. And from here, we'll if you don't mind, I'll move on to our technology demo before we take questions from the community. Okay. So this is our districtor mapping tool. This is a dedicated, oh, sorry. Oh, can't see it on the screen. Let's see. Let's disconnect. Are we good now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Technical difficulties. Yeah, so this is the districtor landing page. From here, there's a brief description of what the tool is and what it does. The important thing for the public is, so at the bottom here, you have a button, a purple button here for beginning drawing council districts, and a red button to begin drawing a community of interest. I'll provide a brief demo of both of those options. And all saved maps will go to this public gallery, which will also provide a demo of how that comes into play. I'm sorry, question?
Yeah, how do you click into it? I'm looking at, it says district.org/something and then /empty
Yeah.
maps.
So the links are provided on the city's redistricting website.
And what's the second word in it? Events? Is
Yeah,
that it?
/event/mp-maps.
Okay, before the event, okay.
Yeah, no, but you don't necessarily need to memorize the URL. Those are provided on the city's redistricting website. So you can just click on a link in the city's redistricting website, and yeah, you don't have to remember the exact URL. No, that's a great question. Okay, so I'll dive right into a brief demo of drawing city council districts. And the map tool comes up. You can pan around the map. If you click the little paintbrush icon, you can select the color, and as you can see here, the brush, depending on how big or small you want to make it on the slider, you can either select many, or almost all of them, or you can select just a small handful of census blocks. And this is all. This whole map is built using 2020 census block data, so this is the most accurate and current information available. So as you can see here, if you just click on the map, it'll one of the criteria for the California Fair Maps Act is to ensure that districts are population balanced. So as you're drawing here, when you click, you can actually see the population going up as you include more blocks in your draft. You can see there, ideally, if all 5 council districts have perfectly equal population, we're going for about 7,001. So you can add districts or add census blocks as needed. If you want to if you go a little bit over, like I did here for the blue district, you can use our little eraser icon here, and it'll actually subtract census blocks here in real time.
Perfect.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I think we're done.
we're done. And you can actually see we're also shooting for a maximum population deviation of less than 10%. So as close as we can get to 0 is better, but make sure to stay definitely under 10%. There's also, if you go to this evaluation tab, click this little drop-down arrow here, and you can actually see a real-time breakdown of different demographic groups for the draft districts that you're drawing, which we think is could be very helpful background information for anyone who's providing draft districts. And so we'll go ahead and just do a save. We'll save this draft here real quick. It does provide a URL, so if you'd like to share the URL with community groups or voter advocacy groups, or anyone in the community, you're welcome to do so. You can give your plan a name, so we'll call this community meeting 1211. And you click share to the gallery here. This will make your draft map available for public viewing. Let's go back to the event page. And if I click refresh here, we will see our community meeting 1211 map show up in the public gallery. And we'll do the exact same thing with community of interest. And as you might notice, the community of interest map is slightly different. This is to incorporate a little bit more geographical points of reference like parks, public facilities, medical facilities, educational institutions, etc. Again, very exact same interface as the district tool, increase or decrease the brush size to incorporate a greater or smaller number of census blocks. Give your draft community a name. COI 1211. You can also give a brief text description and save that as well.
Oh.
Yeah. And we'll go ahead and share that to the gallery as well. Refresh. And there's our draft COI. So it's designed to be a pretty straightforward interface. Again, are there any questions or from either the IRC or the public regarding the district or mapping tool? Okay, I'm seeing no questions. Oh, we
Where
do
do we
have.
get our hands on it?
Huh?
Where do we get our hands on it?
These are both available now.
Okay.
So the links are on the city's redistricting website. Thank you to City Clerk Harriman.
There we go.
They're really there.
Yes.
I'm working on getting them higher up on the page. You do have to scroll a little bit to get to them, but we are working to get them at a little bit easier place to find. But they are on the redistricting site.
Yes. Absolutely, great question. Yes, Vice Chair.
So, communities of interest, do those also include our neighborhoods, specific neighborhoods within Menlo Park?
Yeah,
Are
absolutely.
those defined as communities of interest, or are
Yes.
those separate? No,
Absolutely, they can be, and actually, that's actually a great thing to demonstrate on the map here. So if you go to the data layers tab here in the middle, we actually have different layers that you can toggle on and off. And one of those includes the actual geographic neighborhoods defined by the city of Menlo Park, which do provide some great geographic context when you're either drawing draft districts or communities of interest. Can everybody see those on the screen here? The neighborhoods turned on? There's also other geographical features such as local school districts in the area, flood zones, which is particularly important for District 1 since that's the one closest to the bay. So you got that there, and few other multifamily parcels may also be another one. That's interest. Yes.
So once we start using the tool and trying to accomplish some things with it, if we have questions, is there an email or something on the site that'll tell us who we can direct us to?
Let me see. Yes, it says to contact the city clerk. So I will be here for all of your questions.
Great, thank you very much.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about the population.
Yeah.
When I use the tool, which I just love these tools, the district.
Oh, I'm
one-
sorry.
Just one second.
Oh, sorry.
So, thank you all, members of the public again. So happy to see you. This is why we're here. For the sanity of our city clerk, please remember to state your name and what you agree with, especially with Menlo Park. For our own record keeping, we have a good administrative record of who came, who spoke,
recognize this?
No, this is, I think what we were going for this afternoon was a little bit more of an informal exchange of how to use our mapping tool. So as you all are very well mannered and I don't really feel the need to have to recognize anybody. So if you would please just introduce yourself and then,
Yes,
so-
Pamela Jones, resident of District 1.
Ms. Jones, nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you all in person too. Yeah, thank you. I was looking at District 1 and the population that came up was a little over 5,000.
Oh, well,
Was that correct?
so this is, the map here incorporates the census blocks for the entire city. We do not have the current districts on this map.
Okay,
Yeah, so and one of the main reasons for that is because the districts as they exist today were created using 2010 census blocks. We're creating new districts as part of this process using the 2020 census blocks.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I answered the question, because I thought,
Okay,
yeah, when I, did the, mapped it out. Thank you.
perfect. Yeah, do we have any other questions regarding the district control? I do have one more technology demo.
Can I compliment some questions?
Yeah, sure. This is,
So, so the Census Bureau reviews the geography every 10 years. And this year, what they've done is they've consolidated a lot of geography that either was very minor in scope or maybe had very low population. So for instance, state of California had over 720,000 blocks 10 years ago. This year, there's only 520, half a million. So they eliminated a quarter of the geography. But the geography that they eliminated, much of it were freeway on-ramps or maybe some rural geographies that had no population. And so that's impacted many of the rural counties or places like that. It didn't probably impact an urban area like here. And in fact, in some urban areas like this, the geography actually increased. If it grew and large, they would split. So the geography does not mesh, but we try to do the best we can to connect previous geographies with current geography. And you'll get that later as we start generating reports.
perfect. Yes,
I was just gonna ask if you could, for the audience, because I know that the term community of interest is a very squishy one.
It
But I
is.
think it's also really crucial for people to get a better feel for what might count as a community of interest and what populations or what areas people might want to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I'll provide a brief high-level description, and if Jesus would like to add any details after that, I'll welcome to add details. So at a very high level, a community of interest is any group of people, could be aging population, people with specific maybe specific needs for transportation, or maybe they want increased public safety from the city council or things like that. But all these groups, regardless of the common interest, they must be defined by a specific geography. So, let's say you have in central Menlo Park here, you have a group of neighborhoods that would like to identify it as a community of interest. As long as they are geographically within the same area, regardless of that common interest, they can be a defined community of interest for the sake of redistricting. Jesus, would you like to add any details?
Well, for sure. So here in Menlo Park, obviously, the neighborhoods that you have already predefined are a community of interest. And so we're going to be generating reports on that. Other community of interest could be things like Central Arts District, for instance, let's say or maybe historical homes, community of interest, or things along that line. The main requisite, however, is that it has some sort of a more or less defined geography, because it's about geography. So, the whole city of Menlo Park obviously is a community of interest if you're talking about maybe redistricting the county. But in this case, the city of Menlo Park is the entire entity here. So roughly that's what a community of interest is. It's a defined geography.
Yes, sir.
David or
do they need to be contiguous or, you know, I mean, in the sense that there could be discrete but very homogeneous things? They have to connect, is that?
They should be geographically contiguous, and that is following in best practices for the California Crime Act Act. On that slide, actually the first criteria for the California Crime Act Act is that we want geography to be contiguous.
And the definition of contiguous, like 101, does it define, is that is there a break there then? If there was some sort of characteristic that crossed over 101 between District 1 and District 2,
Yeah.
would that be seen as some sort of barrier to that, or I mean, what
No.
would break that, being contiguous?
Yeah, so let's say you're crossing over a highway here. You can have blocks on either side of the highway, as long as those blocks are, within the same geographic area, contiguous. Yeah.
And to get to your question about similar characteristics, so let's say you have, let's say a young population or let's say an elder population in different parts of the city. Well, each one of those entities would be themselves a singular community of interest. So they can have multiple characteristics, but they have to have some sort of a cohesive geography.
Okay.
There are not, I think this is also important, there are not too many limitations on communities of interest, but there are some specific ones that are pointed out.
Yeah.
Such as political affiliation. So you cannot create a community of interest that favor or discriminate against a particular political party or political candidate, things of that nature.
And then obviously the other one is the geographic location of incumbents. So that
Right.
is not to be considered. In the past, that was considered part of a lower level best practice because the world of redistricting has these best practices. But the California Voting Rights Act has codified some of those procedures, and it has absolutely eliminated the home or residency of an incumbent as a consideration. We're starting from a blank slate here, and so the incumbency of a city council member or school member or whatever is not to be considered for redistricting.
Yeah, no, these are all great questions.
I have two
Oh,
questions.
yes, Commissioner.
One
Brown.
is, does the shared interest of a community of interest have to be something that pertains to the city council for it to apply to city council districting?
No, not particularly, and this is part of why communities of interest is such a subjective thing. I've heard from other presentations, it could be something like, just being in the Bay Area, maybe there's a group of 49er fans or Giants fans, and like we have a common geography that might not necessarily apply specifically to the Menlo Park City Council, but they could theoretically submit their common geography and be a community of interest.
And how do we take a community of interest into account? Do we decide that some we will respect and change borders for, and some we won't, and if so, are there criteria?
What we were gonna do is we're gonna take input from the community, all of it, and from that create geographies. And so we will look at all of submissions that will come in, and we'll say, we'll sort of do a scenario where people define their community here, and then this group defines their community here, and so we'll try to extract from that a more or less uniform geography for this area.
So you want to have a prioritization between different communities of interest? And what
They're all supposed to be considered equally,
Equally.
but again, we have criteria. The first criteria is population,
Right.
not the deviation. A second criteria, which you haven't mentioned here, is voting rights. So if a district can be created that has a protected voting rights class, in this case African American, Latino, Asian, or other minority groups, then those are supposed to be taken priority. And there's criteria for how those are defined. Everything else is a way to sort of define people who have a common interest. So my daughter has has a dog. And so they all go to their dog park. And so, all the dog park people get together and they say, we need, we need the shade, we need water. And so then, let's say it's located in this part of, West Menlo Park. So that group can get together and come to the city council and say, hey, we need you guys to help us here. So community of interest is sort of a way for folks to define themselves.
So So there's one community of interest that would seem to maybe exist. One of the examples you gave, Mr. Sims, was that people who live in the flood zone near the bay.
Sure.
Another one might be people who live in the flood zone near the creek.
Uh-huh.
The creek runs down the edge of the city, and so to respect that as an idea for a
Mhm.
community of interest, you'd need one very long, narrow district.
Yep.
I just pulling that out of my hat, trying to understand how you would decide to respect or not respect it, because it is geographically contiguous and certainly does contain enough population to create. So, how do,
So those communities of interest, and this was, please chime in if I missed something here. But so if they're geographically contiguous, and like you said, they meet population requirements, based on the input that's provided from the public, we will be generating more or less a composite of all those, because not all submissions will be identical. But we can take the sum of those submissions, create a composite, and then incorporate those into the district lines.
right.
So that so what we want to do, and it's a little bit of a balancing act. So create districts that have equal population, but also respect the needs of those communities of interest that the public identifies that are important to them. Local issues that are important to the local population.
Right. So in order to do that, would you present us with several different drafts, the way that, say, the state commission did?
Yeah. So as an industry best practice, we will be providing the IRC with three sets of draft district boundaries. And those will be based on input that's from the community and the discussions that you will have internally among the IRC. So yeah, it's really a process that depends on an engaged IRC, which this has been great so far, and then that community input is going to really play a key role.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely. Commissioner Wolf.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. The public is meant to suggest community of interest. Are we as commissioners also encouraged to submit those or not?
If you're a resident of the city of Menlo Park, yeah, absolutely.
Or not.
Yeah, or not, yeah.
Is that true?
Yes.
Or not? If you're not a
Anybody can
resident?
submit a community of interest. We have, anybody from around the world can say, this is what we think the Menlo Park,
That's odd.
however, but there's a.
So I thought it's different for council districts, is it not?
This is open, this is a portal on the web, anybody can submit a line, but at the same point, so you are the Independent Redistricting Commission, and you are the deciders of what gets selected. So let's say, for instance, we create 3 maps, the community creates 3 maps, they're all wonderful. You guys can say, you know what, we don't like those, we want you to draw them like this, like this, like this. Hopefully that's not gonna happen, but that has occurred as well. So you are the ultimate authority on what gets forwarded. But mind you, there are barriers of population balance, of all the laws, and then if you don't want attorneys to come in and say, hey, so that's why we're.
So could we then, say, could we instruct you guys as a commission that we don't want you to consider community of interests that have been submitted from non-people that do not live in the district?
We wouldn't know.
Yeah, so really there's,
There's no requirement when you input one on the web to say where you live.
yeah, so because, and this is part of the technology balance, because there is, because the tools are publicly facing, and there are no credentials to verify where a person is submitting from, we more or less have to take everything in to ensure that the tool remains publicly available.
Fine, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But here's a solution to your question. We have seen scenarios where there are phantom maps that are created, complete phantom maps. And I've seen them, where a map would appear and then the board likes that map and they adopt that map, and I can tweet you examples right now. In some cases, and I mentioned the Tulare County office, Tulare redistricting process, what they did there is they had maps that were submitted, and then people from the community or the originators of those maps had to come and present the case for their maps. And there were instances where phantom maps were submitted, and the board, they also had a commission, said, okay, okay, who's here to map, public map 127B? Nobody here? Okay, we throw that map out. And so that's one way for you to have your opportunity to sort of narrow what maps gets through. The other recommendation, I think we had, I don't know if we're gonna get to it. Let's say we have 20 maps. It's good, might be good practice for you at every meeting to say, okay, of the 20 maps, we're only forwarding 5 along to the next time around. That way it seems that things are moving ahead and it limits sort of the debate. And again, we've had situations where somebody submits a map, it gets thrown out. Somebody then changes the street sign and resubmits that map. So we might see any or all of those, but our goal here is to have the process continue to move along, so that in the end, when you're looking at the final 3 or so maps, you pick one of the 3 instead of 25.
And when you say maps, you're talking about draft district maps people can draw and community of interest sketches that they can submit as well?
Yeah, so the community of interest would be incorporated into those draft district maps.
So under this tool, you can submit both a complete
Yeah.
district map
Right.
and a community of interest. We will take those into consideration when we draw our maps. But at the same time, I think when people are submitting complete maps, if they don't meet our criteria, let's say of 10% deviation or the lines are really jagged, we can, and we'll give you sort of a scale. We can say these 10 maps were submitted, 5 of them don't qualify for 1, 2, 3, or 4. We'll throw those out, so we just have the 5 that move forward. So our goal again is to provide you with decisions on maps that fulfill these different requirements.
And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, because just based on the discussions and just thinking about the question about redistricting, it's very easy to glom on to this concept of community of interest, because it's not as easy to just look at in terms of, as compared to numbers of people or geographical interests. And you start to think about, well, what does that mean? It could be things like, a very common community of interest that you'll find, what we haven't talked about would be the way the Menlo Park City School District defines who goes to which school, right? Whether you're an Encinal or a Laurel or a Oak Knoll elementary school student. That would be a community of interest, maybe not necessarily reflected in district map, or maybe they're closely enough to know. But the exercise is to first divide into 5 districts, roughly equal population. The second is to make sure that the maps, or the shapes of those districts are generally regular. And then you can go to the third layer, which is, okay, in drawing these boundaries, have we chopped up what could be an identifiable community of interest? And so that's when we really need to start drilling down, is as we look at what those specific boundaries are, to think about, okay, are there communities of interest that we can identify, and how we maintain the integrity of those communities of interest? Communities of interest is actually a legal term of art. It's defined in the statute. It's a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district. Does not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. So, common social economic interests, right? That is a very broad, squishy case. And so, understandable, but again, that's why we're here. That's why the public is here, because the experts in demographics and map drawing aren't necessarily experts in our community, and so that's what we add to the recipe in drawing the ultimate maps that we go and recommend to the council.
Is there any, you mentioned a fresh start, is there any problem with or good thing about looking at, this is not happening, but let's say we looked at the current maps, and we looked at the population growth, and everything else being equal, everybody's the same. It would be, you kind of say, well, okay, extent that they really need to change, or is it really just, do you want us to say, don't even think about what the current districts look like, just come up with population balance, contiguous, regular shaped districts?
I think that's for us to decide.
Yeah.
I would say though, in practice, because the existing districts were drawn in 2018 based on 2010 data, probably not going to see a huge change in the underlying demographics from the census data. There are many districts where they have not updated districts or did not have any districts, and they are doing that fresh start perspective. And so when you have a city or a jurisdiction like that, you might see much larger shifts. Given the recency of our exercise, I don't expect that to happen, but that can certainly be something that we look at.
So we'll start with the current boundaries and we evaluate them and we'll let you know this is maybe one option. And so, and again, the general Bay Area has not grown tremendously over the past 10 years. Plus the city of Menlo Park is a fairly urban community. So there hasn't been probably, huge construction projects with tens of thousands of people moving in. So we start with something that we have and that you recognize, and then you just let us know, throw them all out, or let's just modify a few streets here and there, taking into consideration the concerns of the community. So again, we're here to assist you in any and all of that.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
So maybe it's a kind of, interesting question. When you describe kind of, what a good map is or bad map, do you have some sort of analytical or, deterministic way in which you describe that? Now, are there figures of merit or loss factors or something that you're using as you're jittering these things around and saying, oh, then I'm getting a weighting associated with this and at the demographic level and the shape that, how is that done? Is that purely kind of just gut instinct? I mean, is there something that's more calculated about it that can be, that when you get a random map from the community, you're able to run it through the same kind of algorithm and say, oh, it scores relative to our guesses. Like, I mean, tell me what the process of actually how you judge a map's merit in terms of meeting the rules.
Yeah, so at a high level, all of the individual census blocks have associated population and demographics within them. So long as we're meeting the population balance for the Fair Maps Act, and like Jesus mentioned earlier, in specific situations, if the demographics work out such that you can create a VRA voting rights district that incorporates a majority of a protected group or ethnic group, then we may take that opportunity to say, okay, there's a majority here in this particular district of Asian or Latino or African American population, for example. Absent of that situation, we're really looking for the geographically contiguous, compact population balance districts.
A lot of it is subjective, but maybe part of your question is, what is the math behind a boundary? And there are mechanisms out there for evaluating the circumference of a map and how rounded it is, how circular or how rounded it is, how compact it is. There are mathematical formulas, and others do that. However, in the case of actually a relatively small city like Menlo Park, you may not be able to get the perfect statistic of a boundary, and you may not want to, because again, it's a matter of checks and balances. And so we have limits, again, population, race, ethnicity questions, and then all the communities of interest, and all of those may not have a beautiful, roundish geography. And in some cases, the communities of interest, and specifically when it comes to VRA districts, you're allowed to create some of the other criteria take a back seat to creating of a federal protected voting rights act.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I actually wasn't trying to make a judgment about the quality of it. It was whether or not there was some consolidated figure of merit that any one map could be assigned that would encompass all of these various, nuances.
There are math formulas that are applied for some of these, and we we can look, we were looking into it, what's the math behind some of.
Well, I'm not actually interested, I'm just saying, when you hand a pile of maps to the commission, do they come with, and here's the relative scores?
Yeah.
So you're, you know, it's not just a, oh, this one looks pretty, there's a, oh, this is the underlying sort of
So,
reference to compare across this whole continuum of what you took it to.
so part of the data that we will be providing to the IRC is for the current district and as we move forward for the draft districts that are created, we will be providing population and demographic data for all of those different drafts, and those will be provided to the IRC for their consideration.
Is that exportable from this tool? Is there anything that allows you to get at the?
No. So it is exportable as a JSON file. I'm not sure if you have experience working with that particular file type. But you can, no, not with district. Yeah. So there, you click on this little menu button here.
Sure.
You can click on export district to JSON.
Right.
And that'll create a JSON file. It's if you. It is importable into GIS software or other software that can digest a JSON file. Unfortunately, that's the only file type that we
No,
can
that's fine,
export with.
JSON's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, so you can export to
Oh yeah, you can also export to CSV, but that just the CSV just doesn't give you the geographic representation.
Right, it'll give you the blocks and the assignments, so you can then import that into the GIS.
Yeah, it's kind of summary, like,
Right.
across the parts.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Jones Correct District 4. I was struck by the way the Voting Map Act is written, that it's the population size, not the number of voters. And
That is correct.
one aspect of that is you could have a district with a whole lot of kids and fewer voters because they don't. Also, it's not voters, it's not even the citizens. It's strictly based on the census, which
Yes.
is legal residents, I believe. And a quick question about the VA. I looked at the VA, I think some of the people with the VA are residents and others are there for short term.
So for those.
But
so for
those who are residents would be considered part of the district, yes.
Yeah, so at the 2020 census, for those residents who were assigned to the city of Menlo Park, those will be the population figures that are taken into consideration for redistricting. Yeah, and you're correct. It does apply to entire population, so that it could include children and people who aren't necessarily registered voters. It totally encompasses the entire population of the city. Correct.
Along that same line, the criteria for creating a Voting Rights Act district, there's three criteria. One is population, the entire population of the location. That includes everybody, undocumented, regular people, and children. So population is one. The second criteria is what's called the citizen voting age population, and that's defined as people that are over the age of 18 and a U.S. citizen. So that's the pool of potential voters in a given area. And the state of California has added a third criteria, which is the percentage of people Asian or Latino origin that are registered voters. And so one way to look at a VRA district is to see what is the population. Is it 50% or more of a particular class, Asian, Latino, African American? The second criterion, is there a 50% of the population of citizen voting age population, U.S. citizens over the age of 18? If that's the case, then it goes to the third criteria, which is voter registration and voting. And then that is what determines if there is what's called an effective district that be created. So it's not just one set of data. It's different sets of data. They come from different sources, but that's the process.
And if going through our census data, you identify those, and for whatever reason they are not reflected in the existing districts, you will let us know.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so one thing that Mr. Garcia's mentioned a couple of times, maybe it's not a familiar term to you all,
can't create one, we will let you know. Oh, can't be done, let's go on to the other criteria.
I have a trivial question, and I'm just curious, the VA is on federal property, so does that count as part of Menlo Park? Is it within Menlo Park, or is it like an embassy that it isn't? Is it or is it not?
If it's within Menlo Park,
but
it's
does it
Menlo
count
Park.
as part of Menlo Park?
If it's within Menlo Park, it's Menlo Park.
It's owned by the federal government, but it's not a sovereign.
If you had a
It's not the Vatican.
if you had a consulate office here, then that would not be it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, any more questions particular to the district? Oh, yes, Commissioner Wolfen.
This is all helpful, that was helpful. So my question is, can you just summarize what our goal is with regard to race and ethnicity? It sounds like it's to avoid this majority-minority situation.
It's to make sure we are,
Yeah. So-
recognizing if we have any majority-minority districts that our district maps don't acknowledge. So it's, we have to look for them.
Right.
To make sure, and we have to make sure that we are.
So, as an example,
Maintain the integrity.
and, purely hypothetical example, just for this scenario, that the chair mentioned. Let's just say, for example, there was, a pocket of the city since the 2018 districts were drawn, where, a large group of, let's say, Latino or African American Pacific Islanders, create a specific neighborhood. And now they create, a district where there's sufficient population to create them as a majority-minority district. That population would have to be recognized so that, and not broken up, as the chair said, so that the voting strength of that particular group is not diluted, in the districting process.
So to be really specific, we were looking for population groups of 7,001, I think, was it? So-
What?
Although it would just have to be, 50%.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so if you, on 7,000, you have 3,600 people in a relatively compact area, you might bump out a district that you wouldn't normally do because it was an odder shape than a normal one, but you would do that to keep that 3,600 people together, as opposed to taking 100 of them and putting them in a different district.
Exactly.
Or 200 of them to drop them below the majority.
Remember, there's two criteria. One is population, the other is CVAP, citizen voting age population. So those two have to be together, and it also has to be of a single race or ethnic group.
Right.
So it'd be Latino or
It
African
can't be a
American.
blend of all minorities
Yes,
or
Yeah,
subset of
you
minorities.
can't say African American plus Latino plus Asian.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
But in that scenario, you can create what's called a influence district,
Okay,
which is, but it's not a, it's not a DRA district.
got it.
A DRA district is of a single protected ethnic class, and, to give you all again, statistical directive 50, Google it, that will tell you what.
It sounds like something that would be happening back, in the part of the world where I'm from, where there's, historical, very strict segregation. So you get some pretty ugly types of sectioning off of different types of people. And so that's what,
Yeah.
you don't find it in California as much as that.
Yeah.
Central Valley, yes.
Yeah, it's more or less, like you said, it's more or less, defined to avoid those kinds of discriminatory practices.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So then back to my question is, with regard to race and ethnicity, our goal is to avoid those situations where we split up a group.
Avoid the situation where you split up a group.
Is there any other thing we're trying to accomplish in regard to race and ethnicity in this process?
If there's a possibility of creating a VRA district, we will let you know.
Yeah.
And then if there isn't, then you go on.
Yeah, then you just follow the other criteria, population and geographically contiguous sometimes.
If a VRA district existed already in the city, would it be something that would be noted in our, like,
Not
would we know
necessarily.
this?
No, not
No.
necessarily. There are some
Okay.
places, they sort of skim over that thing. What you're seeing here, this did not exist 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And so everything that we're talking about and the debate that you're probably hearing, on the outside air, is because many of those places, they just ran these things through without public input, without all that. And so now what's happening is some of that is now catching up to places. things that could have been done right but haven't. And so that's why you're hearing, 10 years from now, it's probably gonna be boring as molasses. You know, you're not gonna hear any wrecking, but right now it's actually very exciting to be a part of. And I am a part of some of that in other areas.
I did have one more technology tool to demonstrate. If there's no more public questions about the district tool. Commissioners? Public comments? All right, let's dive right in. So this is our GeoCIM that we mentioned during the presentation, and CIM stands for Community Input Maps. This is more of a survey-based tool, and it's another reason we thought that this may be beneficial is because this tool is much more lightweight. So if for members of the public who would like to submit their input through a mobile device, or perhaps maybe don't have a strong internet connection to submit their community of interest, this tool is actually a very nice alternative. So you just click next, go to the map, and you can go ahead and begin defining an area of interest. Just zoom into a specific area here, and as you can see, as you zoom in or out, you see more detail as you zoom into the map. If you click this little shape icon here, just click on that. It'll activate a little drawing cursor, and just with every click, you'll basically just create an edge, and double click or double tap on a mobile device to close that. Let's just say, for example, you wanted to go back and make a change. If you click the little pencil icon here, this will highlight the vertices that you drew, and you can actually manually move those. And let's say I want to make this a little bit bigger. We can move this guy right here, maybe expand. Or maybe, okay, no, I completely messed this one up. Let's just delete and start from scratch. There's a little delete button. You can delete your draft and then start over. And let's say we wanted to draw around this little street here. So that's basically, you're defining your geography in here. It's just an alternative way to identify the community of interest. Scroll down. Is this a community of interest? Yes or no? Pretty straightforward. Does your community have a name? Since this is in the South of Seminary neighborhood, we'll say South of Seminary, COI. And you can write a little description. We did provide some hints and tips. You know, maybe you don't know how to describe your community, or maybe you need some hints how to get started. So what are your shared interests? What brings your community together? What are important things? So these are things that'll be passed along to the IRC so that you're getting that information. What's really important to the local community? Since we're just doing a test here, we'll click next. Affiliation. So if you have connections to a community group, a voter advocacy group, you know, League of Women Voters, Common Cause, you know, other groups that may be active in the area, you can go ahead and add that. So for this test, we'll just go ahead and put GeoInnovo demo. And you also have a chance, you know, just in case maybe, oh, I just thought of this one thing I want to put at the end. You can we added an additional comments field. If there's particular landmarks or maybe geographical places that are important in your community, this tool also has the option to submit pictures. So you can submit anywhere from 1 to 4 pictures. We'll select click on the little button here. Should bring up a prompt. And we'll just go ahead and add the city logo and the Menlo Park logo, or the city logo and the GeoInnovo logo. And once you're done, you know, you can submit no pictures if you want. You can submit up to 4. Click submit, and there you go. We will see all that information on our GIS portal, and we will then be as information gets collected, GeoInnovo will be passing that information along to the IRC. So we try to keep it very simple. You know, 3 pages. If you want to submit pictures, you can. And this tool will also be available in Spanish for those who prefer to fill out the survey in Spanish.
2 questions. One is the option for uploading pictures available in the other tool you described, or is it only available for this tool?
Only on the GeoCIM tool.
So can you, I mean, how do you do both things then? If you wanna do it in the one tool, but you wanna upload pictures, you have to do it in this tool, which is a little less powerful.
Right.
So how do you accomplish that?
Yeah, so the CIM tool, because, I mean, it is, I mean, the CIM Community Input Map, so this is more designed specifically for a community of interest, whereas the other tool, which is a bit more robust, people tend to create their draft districts in that map. You can also do community of interest in the districtor tool, but we're just providing this as an alternative, just in case people, the public would like to have that alternative option for communities.
Right, but I think what you made a compelling argument, but the photo aspect of it being somewhat
Right.
important, but you now have partitioned that, so you can only do one or the other, you can't do both in the other tool.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because we're so far into the process at this time, we are unable to make those changes to the application.
There's no other parallel process to say, I submitted map XYZ through an alternative portal to say, here are the 4 images, and I wanted to bolt onto that, and, you know, if there's any way to associate another piece of information to the other tool?
You can submit shape files on your own, you can make, send drawings or pictures, and we're gonna use this as an alternative methodology to collect the communities of interest. So we'll have it coded, you know, that it came from this individual or this person, and so you can submit both, but we will bring a composite of all of them together.
Let me just make sure, so if I did it in the districtor tool,
Sure.
and I wanted to submit a picture because there's some landmark that represents kind of the cohesiveness of it,
Yeah.
there's another way in which to send that picture that would then eventually could like connect back to my.
So not through the districtor tool.
Okay, so you're saying no, basically the answer is, if you use the districtor tool, you can't submit a photo. I mean, that's
Correct,
definitely true.
correct. Yeah, at the central
There's
zone.
no other
yes.
like email or Dropbox or other portal that say, hey, my reference number was XYZ from submitting the COI and the district tool. Please associate these 4 images I've sent along. You're saying that's not possible?
Well, there may be a way to, I think, we're gonna set up an email, you mentioned the point of contact earlier. That might be a way to.
You need a reference that pointed back to the thing.
Yeah,
So
we would have to
I don't know if you get back up, you know, here's your submission reference.
Yeah, the bottom line is that it would not be integrated directly into the district tool. It would have to be a separate submission with.
And I appreciate that, you get that, but I'm just trying, I mean, and if you say no, then
It's a one-way submission.
Well, but the modality submission in that one tool, whereas you get a weaker tool in the mobile environment.
Right.
So.
I think it's probably doable, because the district tool assigns an ID number, right?
Yes,
There's
it
an
does.
ID number. So, and this may be something for Gio, Anovo, and I to speak offline about how subsequently people can just email me, like, can you please attach this in
Right,
reference
that's
to
what
my
I'm asking.
map
Thank
ID
you for-
number.
for-
So, yeah,
maybe
it's
there's
not
a
impossible.
reference I can then associate.
Yeah, exactly, it's
with
not
it.
impossible, it is doable.
Okay. all right.
Might take some finagling, but yeah,
Good.
that sounds like it's doable.
Appreciate that. Second thing was, in either of the tools, can you export the vertices of the polygon you draw on there so that if you're working in some other tool and want to
So,
go?
from the districtor tool, yes, you can export it as a JSON. Unfortunately, that is the only format at
Okay,
this
so
time.
that hand-drawn thing we just did in the mobile environment, there isn't any way to get out your vertices from that?
We could probably send it back to you as a shape file when we get it.
Okay, I'm just trying to, because, yeah.
We
You
can
can do a screen capture, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't get the
Yeah, you don't get the vertices, like if you wanted to do your own analysis on your geography,
Yep.
right? I suppose we could make it exportable, like City Clerk Karen mentioned, these are things that are doable. It would just have to be done on a case-by-case individual.
I would suggest maybe an FAQ, which kind of speaks, at least provides a pointer, maybe all the pointers are gonna go to you, but some of these things. There are some tech savvy aspects of the area, and people are gonna.
Absolutely.
Gonna wanna do some of this stuff.
So if you want the shape files, I'm sure we can make them all.
Okay.
For whoever wanted all.
Okay.
Did you want the shape files? There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that concludes the technology demos.
Thank you, Mr. Sands.
Thank you very much.
Anything else from our commissioners or members of the public?
In our meeting on Thursday, there was reference to the fact for people who don't have access to computers or aren't very tech savvy, there would be paper maps available. Do we have?
Yes, we do have them in the front, in the entrance, paper maps available as well as pencils. We also have pens available. So, yeah, those will be, again, they're available here today. will also be making them available at any city facility that is open. They can be submitted, either via mail, they can be dropped off at any hour at the Menlo Park Police Department, which is open 24 hours. And then, of course, if people wanted to submit scanned copies of their hand-drawn maps, they can do that via email. And we'll be making all of that information also available on our website for those who may not have access to the mapping tool. And coming back to the IRC is just another public input item where we will discuss how to get more information out to people outside of just electronic communications.
Have we considered having computer kiosks at the main branch and the Belhaven branch that would be sort of identified as being an electronic way in which to do this, if the community wanted to do that?
That's actually a really great option, something we can definitely look into. Thank you.
When are the maps due? I'm sure it was on the calendar, but when does the community have to put their?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the deadline for public input, I think the slide that began, I believe it's March 25th. Yeah, March 25th.
Okay, yeah, I think it's like we can do it.
Yeah, no, that's a great to reiterate that item.
Yes, because each map requires a 7-day public comment period. So for 7 days, people can comment on a map, so the last day to receive a map would be March 25th.
I seem to remember that there was some discussion about making the public aware of the input process, and I can't recall what it is. Are we going to put that at a different meeting? Does anybody know the answer to how we're doing that?
Can you ask the question again?
How we are making the public aware, or what publicity there is around, and what is community outreach specifically?
Yes, so that will be coming back, I believe, at your first January meeting. As of now, we're doing mostly electronic communications as well as newspaper publishings. So we are, we're engaging as much as we typically have, but that will be an item for the IRC to discuss with our public engagement officer, to how to broaden that.
Last call. Seeing none. We can wrap it up today. Thank you.
Yes.
John Craig, I misidentified myself. I just looked that I'm actually in District 5.
Well, let's see what we can do about that.
Where do you want to be?
Thank you to everybody who, from the public who attended. We appreciate your input, and we look forward to continuing to receive input as we go through our process. This adjourns our meeting. We will see you all on the, what's our next?
18th. That's our virtual and in-person.
Next weekend at, City Hall, right?
Yeah, city council chambers.
Very good. Thank you all.
Good to see you. Yeah, sorry.
So, Commissioner Saw did let us know that he will be missing first.
Thank you very much, Carolina.
Happy to do it.
So I will.
But it's all ridiculous.
No, I've seen you before, I cannot.
No, very,
Yeah.